Chapter 10. She was awakened by someone approaching the fire pit. She had slept by it to ensure she did not miss helping with breakfast. It was still dark, and someone was busy arranging logs just a few feet away from her. "Can I help?" she called out, stifling a yawn. "Sorry, Tilly. I didn't mean to wake you," Rowan apologized. "It's okay. I hoped I could help make breakfast." "That would be great. It will be easier to see what we are doing when the fire starts." "Do you need some kindling?" Grade's voice offered as he approached. "That would be great. I wish I had thought about it before it got dark last night," Rowan confided. Hearing a scraping noise and seeing little sparks of fire, she was happy to see Grade light a candle. "I made a small pile last night before dinner," he said as he walked towards the log he had set on the night before. She watched him bend over and grab something from the ground before walking back to the fire pit. She saw Grade's burns in the candlelight and felt sad looking at them. "Rowan, what was Audie like?" she asked. The question surprised Rowan, and he took a moment before responding. "Audie was probably the kindest person I have ever known. He was very large, but I never felt small next to him." "I hear he liked to sing," she continued, hoping to learn more. "He did, and had the most beautiful voice. My mom said no baby could fight sleeping if he sang to them." "Did they have children?" "No, but he was friends with all of the children. Do you know?" She let her voice trail off before continuing. "Do you know what happened to him?" "Nobody does. They were injured in the venture, but no one knows what happened." She didn't like that answer and wanted to ask more questions when Grade called them. Grade was kneeling next to the fire pit, beckoning them to come closer. As they surrounded him, he lowered the candle to the base of the unlit fire. "Look," he said, pointing to a small leather pouch. Reaching in, Rowan pulled it out. "I didn't see it when I set the fire up. Is there anything else?" "I don't think so," Grade said, lowering his candle to make sure. Huddled around the candle, they could only see kindling and wood, so Grade lit the kindling. They could inspect the leather pouch with the extra light from the fire. Rowan had handed it to her for inspection while the fire caught. It was a small pouch, about the size of her palm, tied shut with a leather string. She squeezed it and could tell it was full of small, hard objects. She tried to pull the leather string, but it would not budge. "I'm not good with knots," she said, handing it back to Rowan. He tried unsuccessfully and offered it to Grade. Grade took the pouch and inspected it, but could not open it. "Maybe we will be able to see what we are missing when there is more light," Grade said, handing it back to Rowan. They made breakfast and ate in silence. They were the only ones awake as they watched the beginning of the sunrise. Callity stumbled to the fire a few minutes later. "I am so sorry I overslept." "I'm not. I hope you got some needed rest," she offered. "I don't know why I was so tired, but I really was," Callity said, taking a mug of oatmeal. She took a bite and exclaimed, "Oh, that is such a beautiful sunrise." "Don't talk with your mouth full," Rowan teased. "Mom wouldn't like it." She saw Callity wince before casually saying, Yeah. They sat in awe. Slowly, others joined them, but each seemed to instinctively know it was a sacred moment to be felt in silence. Only Harma and Hal weren't up when the sunrise colors began to fade into blue. "Should we wake Harma and Hal?" Rowan asked. "There's no hurry. We don't know what we are doing yet," Tide commented. "Plus, Hal is awake. I just don't know where he is." Looking thoughtful, Rowan decided, "We have something to share that Grade found. Let's round everybody up." Page break. Hal was nowhere to be found. They had been looking for over an hour, and frustrations and fears were rising. It was only the second day of the venture, but time felt so different there. Tomorrow would be the inner circle, and they needed to accomplish what needed to be done to get there. She was trying not to worry about wasting time as she continued to call out and search for Hal. She was due to regroup, and she was concerned about what they would do if they didn't find him. They had divided into groups of two, but Pete left her a half-mile back. so she was alone, as she preferred. Walking in the woods gave her time to reflect on her time alone the night before. Everything seemed more beautiful. The sunrise, the woods, and the creek she was walking by seemed more peaceful and calm. She wished she was a singer, for this would be the perfect place to sing. Looking around to make sure she was alone, she began to sing the song she had hummed years before to settle the cow. She sang it a few times, each time getting bolder. She was finishing the stories I have yet to learn when she heard something. Straining her ears, she listened attentively. Yes, she was hearing something. She began to run in the direction of the sound. "I'm coming," she yelled. Stopping to ensure she was still going the right way, she yelled again. "Here," she heard in response, and scrambled up the hillside away from the creek. She saw a cluster of large boulders and headed for them. "Where are you?" she yelled. "In the rocks," came Hal's muffled response. Looking for a way up, she finally found a section where she could get footings and handholds. Pulling herself up, she called again, "Talk to me, Hal! Where are you?" "Tallest boulder," his voice came from the rocks. "Under that." Turning to face the direction she had just come from, she yelled, "Pete! Pete! Help!" She got caught on her dress several times as she scrambled towards the tallest boulder. Apprehensive of finding blood, her mind reminded her of when she had found Tilly dead on the lawn. She breathed deeply from exertion and emotion. Her rabbit had been her only friend, and the last gift her mother had given her. She turned back to yell for help and could feel extra volume as she pleaded with Pete to find them. The gardener had found her sobbing over Tilly's maimed body. He had used his apron to wrap Tilly's bloody remains. It had been so many years ago, but it came back in a torrent of emotion. Again she yelled for help and then continued to climb. The gardener had held her so kindly as she had mourned her friend. She yelled again for Pete and knew she was yelling as much for help as she was trying to make room for what she was afraid of finding. She could still see the clouds in Tilly's large, dark eyes as the gardener held her close and let her mourn. "Pete! Pete! Help!" she yelled again before making the last push to the base of the sharp boulder. "Hal!" she yelled, bracing to hear his response. "Here!" "Hal!" she yelled again, getting closer to his sound. "Here!" Not seeing him anywhere, and afraid to find him, she yelled again, "Hal!" Another, "Here!" Frustrated to be so close, but unable to see him, she called out again. "Here!" came his response. She closed her eyes to steady herself and felt the calmness she needed. Turning back to yell for Pete again, she heard, "Tilly! Tilly!" She could see Roan, Grade, Jasp, and Callity coming out of the woods. A sob ripped from her throat as she flung her arms wildly to get their attention. Sure that they saw her, she turned back to look for Hal. He was nowhere. Rounding the back side of the boulder, she saw a separation in the rock. Racing to it, she dropped to her knees and could see Hal's legs. "Hal!" she cried out in relief. "Took you long enough," Hal replied dramatically. Laughing and crying, she asked, "Are you okay?" "I will be when you get me out of here." Leaning forward, she could easily reach his feet, but was not strong enough to pull him out. "Roan and Grade and the others are almost here, Hal." "I'm not going anywhere, Tilly, so you can relax." Holding onto his feet, she muffled the sobs that came from the relief she was feeling. "I can feel you shaking, Tilly, so either let go so it doesn't push me deeper or stop your crying." The deepest laugh she had ever felt exploded from her lungs as she got the rest of her tears out. Grade was the first person to summit, and she ran to hug him as he crested. The others followed in quick succession, each getting an equally fierce hug. Kneeling around the crevice, Roan asked, "Hal, can you move your neck at all?" "Yes, Roan, but not as much as I would like to." Worry crossed all their faces. Roan was about to ask another question, but Hal shouted, "Because I'm stuck in this hole." Shaking his head in disbelief, and then with a huge grin, Roan said, "Hal, we are going to pull you out now, unless there is something we need to know first. Only that I haven't bathed in days." Straddling the crevice and securely dispersing their weight, Roan, Grade, and Jasp reached down and pulled Hal out of it. His face was badly scraped and swollen, but he was smiling. "Do you think the ladies will like my scars?" They began checking him for broken bones. "Oh, Hal," Calladay cried out as they lifted the back of his shirt. Yanking his shirt back down, he tried to change the subject, but they had all seen his layers of scars from being whipped. "So, you want to know where I've been?" he asked a little too jovially. Steadily looking him in the eyes, Grade said, "I'd like to know where you've been." A look passed between them, but Hal looked away and said, "Well, as none of you seemed to care that we had no plan, I went and found the red team to see what they knew." "Let's get you back and cleaned up, and then we can hear all about what you learned and how you ended up here," Roan suggested. "Okay, that's fine and all, but how about I tell everyone how things happened instead of what it might have looked like happened?" Hal asked artfully. "That will be fine, Hal. You can do all the talking," Roan laughed as they gingerly helped him up.